Why on earth is Nate Diaz even boxing? Mark and I are going to talk about Nate Diaz versus Jake Paul. But before we do, if you're new here, make sure you subscribe as we have brand new videos every single week. So, Mark, let's start very, very simply. Did you even enjoy the fight?
For what it was, I enjoyed it. It was a Nate Diaz fight all throughout the build-up. To be honest, there's been no build-up until this week. I actually forgot it was on. But it was a Nate Diaz fight through and through, just showboating, pointing the finger at him, leaning on the ropes, that kind of thing. It was okay. We complain about it, but I'm here watching it. That's what they want. That's the ultimate goal, isn't it? And I've succumbed to whatever they want there. Did you enjoy it?
No, not at all. Not even slightly. I was watching it on my phone, eating my Cocoa Pops this morning, skipping through like boring. Yeah, it's just not. I'm not a boxing fan as it is. You know, we've said this all the time. I find it really dull as a sport. I know a lot of boxing fans will come for me now, but I just don't enjoy it. But to see it at a really low level like that makes it even worse. Both of them had bad footwork. They both didn't seem to be throwing any good shots. Nate's footwork's almost non-existent. He's just sort of walking forward. His footwork was better when he's walking back to the corner just randomly for no reason at all. I don't get what's going on. But influencer boxing is not for me at all. But let's talk about the first round at least, because there's a few rounds that are semi-interesting. So the first round, we have Jake Paul coming out, and he's absolutely lighting up Nate. What did you think of that first round, Mark?
I thought it could be potentially a round one finish, just with the way it was going, and it looked wobbly. He was chasing him down, that kind of thing. It was very concerning because I was talking with my housemate about it. I was saying, like Nate's biggest weapon is probably his cardio in this, because Jake's the bigger, thicker dude, a hell of a lot more power. Nate can go all day, but it didn't seem like there was anything too heavy behind his punches. He can throw flurries and everything like then land, and he got a lot of success in the clinch. To be fair to Nate, I'd probably give him one round, but it's when he's close to him in the clinch. But again, in boxing, I'm not really that much of a fan. I like yourself in boxing, you could just clinch, and it really slows down the momentum for me as the viewer watching it. I'm not saying they should change the entire rules of the sport just because Mark from Northernlights doesn't enjoy it, but it just doesn't really give me a blood rush,
No, I agree 100%. I found it very dull, and I was exactly the same as you. When I watched that first round, I thought, oh, is that it? Is Nate going to get finished? Because he just seemed like a deer in headlights. He was getting swung on, and he wasn't throwing back. And I don't watch a lot of boxing, but I know that it's very different to UFC. If you're just not answering strikes, even if you stood up, they're just going to call it. And I thought, oh, the ref seemed very generous throughout this whole fight, really, not calling it throughout, because I felt like any other ref could have stopped this at any point. But yeah, it did make me worry that Nate was just going to get flatlined in that first round. But then let's move on to the fifth round, where Jake got that big knockdown. Well, I say a big knockdown. Nate got up pretty quickly, to be honest. Are you surprised that Nate didn't get knocked down more than he actually did? Because if a light wind sort of knocks him down, like look at the Conor fight, he fell over constantly in both fights, even though the first one was quick. He was on the floor constantly, whereas Jake seemed to actually really struggle to really hurt Nate, which surprised me actually.
I was surprised that it didn't happen more often, to be honest. Because he caught him clean. He went down. You see that he stumbled getting back up, and he went down again, like just to cement that was definitely a knockdown. And I thought, I could be in trouble here, and I expected him just to throw a barrage of punches and maybe even get the fifth round finish. But it's exactly what you'd expect from a Nate Diaz fight. He won 1 round out of 10, but he's still throwing his arms up like he's just won the world title. It's just what you're grown accustomed to, isn't it? My housemate was laughing, saying how much he enjoyed it. He said, I really like Nate Diaz and all this kind of stuff. I'm just saying, like, this is just typical Nate.
Yeah.
You go back and watch any of his UFC fights and look at the Leon Edwards. He had one moment of definitive success, and he just points at him and laughs, and you're like, finish it. Go for it,
But I think you make such an interesting point there. I guess for people who aren't heavily watching the UFC and haven't seen Nate act like this way, I guess in some ways he could build a lot of fans and a lot of new eyes who are watching for the first time. Like, you know, how many fighters have you seen who get battered, can be covered in blood and pretend they've won, you know, and like the whole build up to this fight, you know, he's just constantly trying to fight people in the crowd, you know, he's trying to fight the promoters. So you don't see that. So I guess it's quite new, and I guess he can build a new fan base. I mean, I don't know what his new fan base will watch him doing. I mean, I don't see anything.
If I,
What's he gonna do next?
he fights as rare as rocking or shit anyway, doesn't he? So it's not as if it's going to be tuning in next month for another Nate Diaz fight, that stuff. But yeah, I don't know. Overall, it was okay. It was
Yeah,
just one of those. But the thing is, though, we've said before with this sort of YouTuber influencer boxing, whatever you want to call it, when they fight real boxers, you know that it's not really going to happen. They're not really going to go for that gold. But the people that they are fighting right now, there's a lot of money further down the line there as well, isn't there? Look, so
yeah.
there's been Nate Robinson, Ben Askren, twice Tyron Woodley. Then you got Tommy Fury, who just edged a split decision win. And now you've got Nate Diaz. You're like, who else could they fight? And, you know, I dread the day where Chuck Liddell gets called out because he'll do it.
So I don't want to see Chuck get dropped again. Like when he fought Tito Ortiz, what, a couple of years ago. Oh,
Yeah.
made me feel sick. I don't want to see these, like, you know, these Triller cards coming up again where you're just seeing old men get battered. You know, I don't want to see that. But you know, Nate's a totally new opponent for Jake. You know, we've never seen Jake fight, you know, a retired MMA fighter who weighs 40 pounds less than him and, you know, way past his
Yeah.
prime and has no experience in boxing. We've never, ever
No,
seen
no,
that
no.
ever for Jake, you know.
Never seen that. Not with Funky, not with Tyron Woodley, who lost 16 rounds in a row. Never seen it, have we?
No, never, not once. And that's the thing, isn't it? You know, we can't blame Jake for cherry picking his opponents, but you know, that's the big problem for me. He's fighting these guys who usually primarily grapplers outside of silver, fight 30 to 40 pounds lighter than him, and they're just out of their primes entirely. And you just think it's such a shame because, you know, if Jake fought a prime UFC fighter, I think they'd batter him. Do you know what I mean? They'd absolutely destroy him. But and someone who's actually in his weight class, that's the problem. So I don't know who Jake could fight next. And to be honest, I don't really care. But there is a lot of talks of him fighting Nate Diaz in MMA, in PFL. Do you think that's a possibility? And do you think that's something that you'd be interested in watching?
No, and no, to be honest. I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's a far reach. I think it's just one of those things straight after a fight where there's a lot of talk, a lot of buzz about it, that kind of stuff. But it's probably not just going to come to fruition. You know, he'll probably end up fighting KSI at some point.
Mm.
Nate Diaz will go and, I don't know, slap some more reporters or something, whatever he likes doing on the weekends, and maybe come back for an MMA fight against someone else. But I mean, what level of interest is there for Jake? Honestly speaking, you know, like he's just beat him in a boxing world. Someone else could transition into the boxing world where he can get a decision or even another knockout win, ideally for him. Why would he take that risk? He's already on this train, whether people love him or want to see him get beat. People are always going to tune in. So MMA, that minimizes his chances so much. I just really do not think it's going to happen. Even after that, after the fight where they said, "Oh, we'll do MMA," I literally said to my housemate, "Don't hold your breath."
Yeah,
You know,
definitely.
don't get excited.
I agree. I think it's a fight I would actually like to see because I'd love to see Jake Paul get choked out by Nate Diaz. I mean, that'd be excellent. But I think, like you were saying, why would Jake take that risk? And especially when he could barely finish Nate in big, heavy boxing gloves. That's primarily striking. I just don't get why Jake would take that risk because, you know, even though Nate didn't have a lot of power, in that 8th round, he was really peppering him up, and I got quite excited. You know, I was like, oh, maybe he's going to finish him here. But if he's got smaller gloves on, he's a heavy, strong grappler, great at jiu-jitsu. I mean, whatever you say about Nate, I mean, he's not the best fighter in the world, but his jiu-jitsu is high level. And if he gets older, Jake, that's it. He's going to choke him out immediately. So, yeah, I don't see that fight actually happening. Though it could do, maybe on like a big PFL card, on these big super fights. But like you're saying, I wouldn't hold your breath for it. But I do think that's all we've got time for. thank him for watching. If you can like, comment, and subscribe, it really does help us out.